Hey everybody, welcome back to the Matt Report, the #1 WordPress entrepreneurship podcast on the web. If you are enjoying this series of WordPress entrepreneurs, I've got a special guest today who's not a WordPress entrepreneur in the sense, but definitely somebody that I've been following for a long time. We're going to get to him in a jiffy. So mattreport.com, mattreport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. It's the #1 way to stay connected with the community. This show is always brought to you by Conductor Plugin, and the Conductor makes it easy to build WordPress landing pages, product pages with WooCommerce, which we'll talk about today. As you know, Conductor is my baby, is my product, so I love everybody who supports the show by purchasing Conductor. And oh, by the way, 5-star reviews are awesome, right? I've got a fellow podcaster on the call today. If I could beat him out in iTunes ratings, that'd be awesome, right? And what's the secret? You go over to iTunes, you search for Matt Report or WordPress Podcast, you hit the old 5-star buttons. We're up to 56 5-star reviews. Thank you, everybody. You don't even have to leave a review. You just got to hover over the 5th star, click it, and that's all you have to do. If you don't like the show, 1 star's fine. I'll take it. Leave a review. Tell me what we can do to improve. But I'm loving everybody who's leaving great reviews so far. All right, without further ado, I'm talking to somebody today who is in a different genre, is doing something very unique in the podcasting world, and not the typical WordPress entrepreneur like I mentioned before. Andrew Youderian of E-Commerce Fuel Podcast, the podcast that I tune into every episode. Welcome to the program, my friend. It's great to meet you and to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It's awesome to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
So I love the fact that all you talk about is e-commerce. I love the nitty-gritty of the e-commerce businesses, and from folks who are just like selling their own product to, I don't even know what you call it in your world. I guess drop shipping, I guess, if somebody's reselling a product. I don't know the terminology. I tune in for the tips, the how-to, and just the experience of what other people are doing. I love all that stuff. I don't love the fact you don't use WordPress, but we're going to dive into that. So give folks the 2-minute elevator pitch, who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, Andrew Youderian. I've been doing e-commerce, I guess, online for a better part of 7 years, and really 2 core parts to my business. On the one side, like you mentioned, have a physical products business. We sell radio equipment. In the past, we've sold stuff, trolling motors, all sorts of different things, and that's what I've been doing full time for, like I said, 7 years or so. So it gave me the foundation to kind of have a sense of how that ecosystem works. It's different, and it's we're not a crazy huge company, but we've got roughly very low 7 figures, and so it's kind of this interesting area where not tiny but not enormous. And after doing this for 4 or 5 years, realized, hey, there's decent number of other entrepreneurs kind of in this situation, straddling, they're making full-time incomes online, but they're an individual owner with a team of maybe 5 to 10 people or even smaller, trying to do everything that these huge companies do. So decided that's when I kind of made the jump to also start blogging about e-commerce, talking about how to run a store, how to get one going over at ecommercefuel.com. And so I write over there, I podcast over there, like you mentioned, and we also have a private community for kind of people that fit those criteria, that are a little more established, are independent merchants, and that make a living online. So that's kind of my my story in a nutshell, what I'm up to.
That's awesome. A lot of the folks listening to this are, of course, WordPress folks. They're either designers or developers, sort of servicing, maybe even folks like yourself or folks in your audience who are building out shopping sites or e-commerce sites. There are other people who are selling digital product, and they're simply tuning in so that they can figure out which plugins to use and which tactics to use to sell their either courses like maybe you do and membership sites. I'm curious, though. So a lot of folks, the majority of the folks are people like me who have WordPress product, and we're looking at the big boys, be it StudioPress, Woo themes, and we're like, man, it's tough to compete against the big boys. I'd imagine it's even harder in your case when you're looking at like Amazon, Alibaba. Like what? I mean, how and what's the mindset you have to get in to compete in this space?
Yeah, good question. Amazon's just turning e-commerce on its head. If you look at it, it's hard. I wish I could hate them. I say this a lot. I wish I could hate Amazon, but they offer like the perfect cross intersection of great value and trust and convenience, right? They're probably not the cheapest in the world, but man, they have a pretty compelling proposition for those 3 when you combine them. And so would love to hate them and say they offer terrible service and terrible selection, but they don't. And so as an independent merchant, you really have two ways to compete against them. One, you either have to specialize on selling existing products. This is what we do. Specialize very narrowly and provide a ton of value-adding information. So we sell radio equipment. It's all we focus on. Installing radios in your vehicle is pretty confusing, and so we get tons of tech articles, tutorials, things like that. Our value add isn't the product; it's the information and making that purchasing process easier. That's one way. That's the harder way. The easier way, where I think e-commerce is going for independent merchants, is to build a proprietary product. Just because Amazon, all of a sudden, if you have your own proprietary product, Amazon, instead of becoming a place where you have to compete with 100 other merchants and squeeze out a razor-thin margin, becomes a great platform to be able to get your product to an audience where you can control the margin and distribution. You don't have to. You can set the price. So those are the two ways we see in terms of the only real chance you have against beating out Amazon.
Yeah. It's the thing that's big in our world, and I'm sure in your world, because you just hit on it, is content marketing, building the brand, building a personal brand. I'm assuming that's what you're doing too. I mean, you're probably building free info products, lead magnets, drip campaigns. You're doing probably video reviews. What's that like in your world for these physical products? A lot of us are selling digital products. What's that like in your world with car radios and stuff like that? Are you actually going into a car with a GoPro and mapping out how to install it? What's that like?
Yeah, so we do for the value adds. Really, I think for us it starts with figuring out what problems. I mean, this kind of probably applies to any industry, but what problems do people have, and identifying those and trying to think through where those questions pop up in the purchasing process and proactively addressing those. So we do a lot of video content. Really just showing people hands-on what the product looks like. We have a lot of installation guides that come with our packages. So we'll go, and because it's intimidating to somebody to install, who's never done it before, to install a radio in their vehicle. So maybe we are selling the exact same product and same radio equipment that Amazon is, but you go to Amazon, you're not going to get a complete custom 7-page illustrated guide on how to install this exact product in your vehicle. Amazon doesn't offer that, and so that's something where it's a pretty big value add for someone to feel comfortable to be able to do it themselves. They'll pay, sometimes we'll pay more. So installation guides, videos, really providing guidance on what works with other products. A lot of these radio installs, they require 5, 6, 7, 8 products, not all of them which work together. So helping people really feel comfortable that, hey, this is all going to work together. You're not going to have to spend 2 extra weeks getting frustrated, returning it, and then waiting for a new one to come, because we can tell you what works out of the gate. So those are the value add. That's it's not content marketing in the sense of blogging. In fact, we don't really even do a whole lot of blogging on our site, although you can do that well with e-commerce, but more it's about providing a ton of value and educational content baked into the product.
Radios in my first few cars, and it was like, get the wire harness, get the mount, get the brackets, do you want whatever, I don't even remember, 10 gauge wire so it's got the best sound, there's all this stuff, and you're just, there's all these things you want to make sure it works well. So I definitely see that. Some of the people, again, like myself, when we're selling product, right, we're not reselling anybody else's product unless you're doing maybe affiliate sales with WordPress product, but a lot of us set out to craft our own solution, right? We look at what themes we can create, we look at what plugins we can create, and we look at that market. For an independent merchant like yourself, where is the secret sauce where you're getting the inventory from and then reselling? Is that the secret sauce in this scenario, or is it very much just we can buy this inventory from this person and then sell it at this price, and it's just based on volume? I guess I apologize because I don't know the market. So what is that secret? How does one person say, I'm going to start selling car radios tomorrow? How do they do that?
Yeah, so really, it sounds like what you're asking is what's that secret sauce that allows you to succeed online with e-commerce? Let's throw that out. Let's just say if somebody said, I like that, I also want to sell car radios, what would they have to do? Where do they even go to find car radios to buy to sell? Yeah, good question. So product sourcing is getting, I think maybe. I think maybe 5 years ago, and perhaps for people just coming into the industry, that a lot of times the biggest hang-up is, where do I source products? And actually, that's not that difficult of a thing anymore. I mean, between Alibaba for finding products in China, between a lot of drop shipping directories, or just even some Google searches, tracking down products to buy either in wholesale or drop ship isn't too difficult. So that's not the secret sauce. I think the secret sauce is figuring out. This sounds like a really cliche because it applies to pretty much any business, and so I feel a little bad saying this, but finding out where you can add value. If you're selling big screen TVs, let's say, assuming you could even buy them, assuming Samsung's going to let you, or Samsung's going to let you drop ship or buy their TVs, probably won't let you. You can go out and source those, but where you can add value that you're going to get destroyed by Best Buy, who probably loses money on their TVs to sell their $50 HDMI cords to you at a 10x markup. So figuring out, is this actually where am I going to add value? And it kind of goes back again to what I mentioned, adding some kind of informational value in a niche or having your own product. And not all niches are a good fit for informational products. Like if you're selling, again, TVs, sure, yeah, maybe you can educate consumers on TVs, but one of the things is it's not enough to educate. You have to have some kind of friction that allows people to stick on your site to resell. Because if you got a great site, Matt, about TVs, and people say, hey, I want this TV, this is the only thing I need, man, they can shop around that one SKU, that one product to Amazon, Newegg, and super fast and easy for them to just go somewhere else. Whereas on our site with car radio equipment, yeah, they can go on, maybe they can find the radio somewhere else, but they've got a basket of 5 or 6 items in their cart. Maybe it's $150, $200 purchase price. Yeah, they could go shop that six item cart around 4 stores, but that's a pain in the tail, right? And so that's where that friction keeps them on the site. So I think it's a combination of figuring out where you can add value, and if it's a good niche to add value. And second part is marketing it properly. PPC is getting a lot more expensive. Facebook's getting more expensive. SEO is getting harder. And so really, I think it's once you get that aspect down, if you get the foundation laid well, then it becomes 80% about marketing well, making sure you can acquire a customer cheaply enough. So it's getting harder to do, and I think it's requiring more and more creativity and branding because paid advertisement is getting more expensive.
Yeah. One more question about the inside baseball of the business, and then I want to shift over to WordPress. One of the things that is very popular in our space, which maybe is in yours as well, is affiliate sales, and a lot of folks will do informational blog posts like, how do I use, for instance, my plugin, how do I use Conductor plugin to build WooCommerce landing pages? And they build that, information really for my product, but then they have an affiliate link, and somebody goes and buys it, and they get a commission. The difference is in our business. So in our business, people might say, well, they might email the original blogger, right, and say, hey, I bought Conductor because you said it was awesome and it could do all this stuff. But how do I make this landing page like in your blog post? Right, so that person might reply because they've used the plugin, or they might say, look, you have to go and ask the guys over at Conductor to do that. How does that work in your world when you're selling a Pioneer radio and somebody says, it's not working? Do you say, well, look, we can only take it so far, you have to go to Pioneer to figure this out? What does support look like is the bottom line?
Yeah, good question. I think good merchants are going to at least provide at some level a first kind of tier of support for your customers, because it's always frustrating because our customers, they buy from us, they have that relationship with us, and they're probably we're going to be the people they turn to first for any kind of help. And you've got to be careful depending on the niche. I mean, you can't necessarily have a toll-free number where you provide unlimited amounts of tech support with highly trained $40 stat per hour people all day long. You get out of business based on your margins. But whether it's at least a decent level of emails, tier 1 email support, or great resources on your site, I think if you don't offer that to your customers, you're hurting your brand, and you're hurting your the reputation that you'll build in the marketplace. That being said, most products are going to have let's say they got a year warranty. So it's kind of standard in the industry for the retailer, the seller, to really cover defects, problems, issues for say anywhere from the first 30 to 90 days. But then if we sell somebody a radio and it goes belly up a year and a half down the road, or that's something where, hey man, that's a little beyond the scope of what we're going to help you with. We can definitely get you in contact with the manufacturer, but at that point, that's covered under a warranty issue.
Right. Yeah, and then no different than our space and the big talk in WordPress, in the WordPress ecosystem amongst business owners like myself is, And you've probably seen this. You go and you buy a theme for $30. This is years ago. People go and they buy a theme for $30, and then they back then it was people were saying we have $30 for life. Unlimited support for life. It's like $30 unlimited support for life, and there's probably a million things that could go more wrong with a WordPress theme than there would be a car radio, because people start putting other plugins and themes and stuff into their thing, and it's like now you're supporting like, hey, my printer's not printing anymore. I think it's because of your theme. What? No, it's not. That's not how it works.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah. So the economy is definitely in an interesting space in WordPress, which leads me to ask you. I know that you host your e-commerce site with Shopify. Did you ever compare WordPress to Shopify? What made you make that decision? Let's talk about WordPress and probably the elephant in the room, gorilla in the room, elephant in the room, gorilla in the room of the WooCommerce, right? So what made you go with Shopify versus WordPress / WooCommerce?
So we've never seriously looked at WordPress as an e-commerce platform. Like, obviously, hands down, it's the most successful CMS, online right now. But from an e-commerce perspective, we kind of started out with the ZenCart, which was a hosted open, so it's hosted. We have to host on our own servers. Then we moved to Magento, same kind of thing, more complex, hosted as well. And then finally, we're migrating to Shopify, which they host it. And the reason we never looked at it too seriously is when we started, I don't think it was a major player in the industry, 6-7 years ago. At least it wasn't on my radar. And since we've grown, the business up a little bit to the point where we wanted something that was a platform that could handle, instead of just a beginning business, something that was a little more intermediate to advanced, more mature. The other platforms we've looked at are just, they're specifically catered for e-commerce. They're built for exactly around that. So yeah, they may be a little more complex to set up, but just the functionality for them is going to be more robust than for WooCommerce.
Is it something like maybe inventory management? Maybe does it tap into your product sourcing thing? Is it better for support? What are those the things that you like about them?
Yeah. So, and again, a lot of this to preface this, never having used WooCommerce, these are things that I've just talked with other people about,
sure.
Kind of learned secondhand. So if I slip up on one or two of these, that's why.
The Matt Report Nation will not be knocking on your door.
So let's not give out my email address right after this for complaints, which may come pouring in. But so some of the things, for example, we're going over to Shopify right now, and we have a lot of variations. Let's say we have a package that has, 20 different options. Well, Shopify and just about any e-commerce platform worth its salt is going to provide what's called an individual SKU per variation, so that you can sync that up with inventory, all these kind of things. Whereas I don't believe something like WooCommerce will let you assign individual SKUs per variation. I think you can definitely have variations, but you can't keep track of those. At least previously, maybe they've updated that, but you couldn't do that. Things like SaaS integrations, like there's a service that we used in the past called Ecom Hub that kind of syncs inventory between our suppliers and our store. There's a whole, just like in WordPress, there's a whole ecosystem of SaaS apps and applications that help you run an e-commerce store, and I don't believe most of them tie in or integrate very well with, or at least a lot of them don't, with something like WooCommerce, whereas they would with Shopify, with Magento. So you've got things like that. So those are kind of some of the, in terms of maybe one other thing in terms of maintenance, one of the great things about WordPress is it is such a robust, it's such a huge ecosystem. There's so many plugins available. But as you and your listeners well know, you got to stay on top of that, right? Between updating the core WordPress and making sure your extensions are playing nicely with each other and on upgrades, it can be, you got to be on top of that. And from a security breach standpoint, because WordPress is so much more popular, there's probably there are more vulnerabilities, and because e-commerce by nature, you're collecting more sensitive information than perhaps if you're just blogging or doing something else. Those breaches are more serious, and so something like a hosted platform for e-commerce, you don't have to worry about that. And on the on the Magento side, or on the if you are hosting your own open source, whether it's Magento or OpenCart or something else, you're probably going to see fewer vulnerabilities just because it's not as popular, and all of those extensions are are designed specifically for just that e-commerce. So you're probably going to have less problems. So those are, I kind of went on for a while, but those were probably the reasons that didn't pick that. We haven't picked it for a more mature business. That being said, I'd love to dive into some of the cases where I think it does make sense as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to sort of maybe transition to that. I think the argument would be, and I've actually heard you say this on your podcast before. I think you were doing the I forget the guy's name that you were with, but you were sort of doing, I think it was the tools episode or the top tools that you were using. Anyway, the point is that I think you did mention that you could use WordPress and you could use WooCommerce, and for like the drop, like if you didn't want to ship to Argentina, right? You're kind of stuck, or you didn't want Argentina in a country list, you might be stuck with that on a hosted e-commerce platform because they just have Argentina in there and you can't pull that out. Though you host it on your own custom WordPress and WooCommerce, you could pull out Argentina and do this stuff. You could probably extend it to do SKU per product variation by hiring a developer. There's tons of add-ons for WooCommerce. Off the top of my head, I don't know if they have it. But I think that your argument, too, in that episode was, yeah, they could do it. You're just going to have to spend some time customizing it. And at what point do you make that transition to say, it's worth my company to invest in a custom platform on WordPress because of marketing or SEO control, or you want to take your website and turn it into an app and maybe your hosted platform doesn't support that, whatever it might be. That's not really a question to you. I guess it's more of just a statement. Like at some point there might be some return on investment if you said, you know what, we need to control this entire thing from start to finish, and we can't rely on a hosted platform. Do you ever see yourself getting to a volume of sales where it doesn't make sense to do a hosted platform anymore, and you have to bring it in and build it your own way? Do you think that it's ever going to come up?
Yeah, I hope so, because that means the business is taking off and growing, and we have some really custom requirements that can afford to implement them. So, but I think personally, what I have seen with other merchants, and whether you're mid to high six figures or kind of low seven figures, the benefits of having a hosted platform where everything works, everything upgrades, particularly you don't have to manage IT, usually outweigh at that size business the complexity of managing, hiring a programmer, having someone. Because if you're going to have your own custom cart, yeah, you can go out and hire people one-off on Odesk here and there, but that's like your core business, right? That's the core platform your entire business runs on. That can get a little dicey if the guy takes off or leaves. It's really much better to have them as a core integral part of your team for just stability. So that being said, you do see, once you get in that $5-10 million range and up, then I think it makes. Or if you have a business model where the value add is really predicated on, we offer very custom functionality, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. But for merchants in my size, I think a lot of times the benefits of hosted outweigh the incremental customization you could make. So, yeah, does that answer?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. It's interesting because I know that as much as so a lot of the folks in the audience, as soon as you say, just go hire somebody on Odesk, that's when they start running to your house. Just letting you know that right now, because they want, there is, and rightfully so, doing WordPress the right way in this community. Not that people on Odesk are doing it the wrong way, but a lot of people want you to buy into an agency or a small team, boutique agency, boutique firm to support your WordPress, because there are a lot of moving parts. There's no doubt about it. And they say, well, the problem is you might go hire somebody off of Odesk, and if they do disappear, well, maybe you should have hired an agency in the beginning, right? But again, it's business. If it doesn't make sense to retain an agency at X dollars a month, and you're only making Y, you just simply can't make that connection. Is there a holy grail of e-commerce CMSs right now? Is it Shopify? Is there something else out there that that's where you would really want to be at, or is it Shopify?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the merchant and what you're doing. Disclosure before I say this, I've worked a lot with Shopify. They sponsor the podcast, so feel free to take anything I say here with a grain of salt. Full disclosure, but that's for the smaller businesses, again, in that high 6, low 7-figure range, and even higher in a lot of cases. I think Shopify's awesome in terms of the options out there, and just biggest reasons are a huge ecosystem in terms of I think Shopify on the hosted side, in terms of having someone else host your cart, they've got the best ecosystem hands down in terms of developers, in terms of apps. It's akin to WordPress, in terms of the hosted world of e-commerce. So love them for that. They've got a really great platform for their API is really robust. Their customization framework called Liquid is allows you to do a lot of really cool things, and for me that's really important. We're in the middle of a huge redesign and doing some really cool customization stuff I don't know would be possible on other platforms. So I do really like Shopify. For other stores, Magento, if you really want to control, getting back to the question of hosted versus customization, if you really want to control the entire experience of your store, and you have the resources and the developer talent to be able to do that and commit to that financially on an ongoing basis, Magento probably is going to be one that you're seriously looking at. I've been on it. We're moving away from it because it's a beast. It's resource intensive. It's very complicated. It's also very powerful, though. And I'd say on the hosted, the non-hosted side probably has the best, largest ecosystem for quote unquote serious, large, mature 8-figure businesses. So those will be the two you're probably going to be looking at. So.
No, that's awesome stuff. 90 episodes 94, 95 with Zoe Rooney. She actually excels in Shopify customization. So if folks who are listening to this want to hear from a developer and designer who's really progressing with Shopify, go ahead and tune into that. Zoe Rooney, it's episode 94 or 95, something like that. She does primarily Shopify custom development and then uses WordPress for the marketing site and the blog site. Is there, and one last question about the inside baseball of this world, is there in the WordPress world, there's WordCamps. It's where WordPress enthusiasts flock to from city to city. It feels like there's one in every state and country around the world at every week. San Francisco gets up to, I don't know what the number is, maybe over 1,000 people going. Boston was like 700. That's where I'm at. So is there a top conferences that you attend for the e-commerce world that somebody might be interested in attending?
Yeah, good question. That's one of my goals this next year is to get to more conferences. There's a conference called IRCE, Internet Retailer, which happens in June or July every year, and that's probably one of, if not the biggest e-commerce conferences. It's geared a little bit more toward larger merchants again, probably like high 7, low 8-figure merchants. But again, that's kind of the World Series of e-commerce. Magento Imagine, they do that every year, but again, that's going to be geared towards larger businesses. We actually just did for e-commerce fuel in our community. I didn't see I saw like a gap in the market for. That's one of the reasons I started the community for those smaller high 6, low to mid 7-figure businesses. And we're actually started our inaugural e-commerce fuel conference in Austin. We had it this year, awesome. and we'll be doing it every year. Little self promotion there. I apologize, but yeah, those are the kind of the two that stand out in the marketplace for me. Do you mind actually, before we move on from this, I hate to. I think there definitely is a place for WooCommerce. Do you mind if I give the hey, here's where WooCommerce does shine and where it does make sense?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. So they don't think, so we're not completely throwing them under the bus. And doing just a little research for this call, was looking through some threads, and there's a guy in our forum that very successful. If I had to guess, he's doing low to mid 7 figures, and he started his business on WooCommerce, and it was great. It worked fantastically out of the gates. And so I think some of the strengths of WooCommerce are obviously WordPress is well known. A lot of people are very comfortable with it. And if you're thinking about getting into e-commerce, thinking about starting a business, and especially if and you have a background in WordPress and know it well, use it. Absolutely use it. Use it to kickstart it, because almost certainly when you're starting out, your success and failure isn't going to be based on the platform that you choose. It's going to be based on your product, how much value you're adding, and specifically how well you market. So use what you're comfortable with. So And again, there's a huge ecosystem. I mean, the downside of potentially upgrading all those apps and things, the flip side is there's so many developers that know this platform well. There's so many extensions for it. So it really is you can really tweak it, especially if you know what you're doing. So there are some downsides, but if you're getting started and you know it well, use it until it becomes a problem, especially if that's something you have a forte in, because it's hard to beat the price and it's hard to beat the fact that it's so popular and well known.
Yeah, I mean, in my agency world, it's one of the things that, when we're up against bigger bids on e-commerce platforms, and usually it comes in from like the Drupal side, sometimes it's the Magento side, we say that, look, it's going to be faster to execute if we build this in WordPress. Like you said, the failure isn't going to be like, am I using WooCommerce or am I using Shopify? It's going to be, are you executing the business correctly? And we can get you from start to at least 5th gear before you get to the 6th gear a whole heck of a lot faster with WordPress. We can prototype faster, we can build it faster, we can do mobile faster. Even if you want to mature it later, I mean, why not do the MVP and launch your site? That's good to hear that you have somebody in the forums that's successful. Oh,
absolutely. And I mean, it's when I got started with Magento, I mean, it took me 2 months to get up, 2 months solid to get up to speed on it, because I didn't know it very well. I had to, my Unix skills were really ghetto, and I had to figure out how to do a little server admin, and so that's crazy. So, if there's someone listening right now that knows WordPress well, obviously there's going to be a lot of people in your audience thinking about starting something, doing something like Magento, which is a big hairy beast, and learning that, maybe more feature rich versus using WooCommerce, which you really know the foundational platform on WordPress on. Oh, go WooCommerce, absolutely. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the last segment, and I want to talk about podcasting and your membership platform and sort of your take on all of that. First question about podcasting, something that's sort of near and dear to my heart is podcasting, of course, now coming back. It's all the rage. Everybody wants to do it, but I'm starting to see. Like when everybody was just blog just to blog, guest post just to guest post. Now it's like podcast to podcast, and I'm just seeing people just like putting out stuff that's just blah or just copying somebody else. There's no real passion for it. The reason why I tune into your show is because I feel like you like doing this. It's not just a marketing vehicle. You just like having the conversation, as do I. What's your take on the state of podcasting and all the noise, no pun intended, that we're getting from all these shows?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. We're kind of, use another cliche term like this renaissance of podcasting. I think it'll be interesting to see. Podcasting is one of those things. You're doing pay-per-click, you're doing Facebook ads, you can log into Google Analytics and see exactly how much this made you, right? So I think that to have a podcast that's viable in the long term, it's got to have two things. You got to, one, really enjoy doing it, because like, as you know, Matt, this is, even when you love doing it, and I love doing mine as well, it's relentless every week, whenever your schedule is, like, it just, it's another podcast is coming up, and so you got to know what you're talking about, and you also got to enjoy it most of the time. And plus, I think you do need to be able to, at some point, have it be part of a larger strategy for building your brand, to be able to tie that back. So I think, and we can get into those, maybe how to do that if you want to in a follow-up, but in terms of a lot of the copycats out there and things, I think we're kind of right at this peak where it's podcast has gotten so popular the last 12 to 18 months, and we're still in kind of that year range where once you hit a year and past, it really becomes like, man, you can do it for a year, but after that it's like, wow, how much is this really worth it on an ongoing basis? I think we probably will start seeing a lot of people drop off on the podcasting circuit, and I think the people that do stick around will probably see some outsized benefits for it. But it's interesting. I love it. I love listening to podcasts. I don't know about you, Matt, but anywhere I go, I'm plugged into my phone, so I'm not complaining. It's great.
Yeah. My Stitcher app, when it's running, if it can ever stay stable, I don't know. If I boot it up right now, maybe I'm at like, I don't even know how many minutes. Either way, it doesn't matter. But thousands and thousands of minutes, or hours consumed, I should say, is Stitcher tells you when you load it up. So it's definitely interesting. I definitely have this, like, I don't know if you watch the Ask Gary V show, Gary Vaynerchuk, on YouTube, but I just have a feeling like that is gonna spawn off so many not repeats, but so many people copycats. That's what I was looking for. I think it's gonna spawn so many copycats, and it's scary. I think.
Yeah, one quick thing, if you don't mind, Matt. One last thing I
Sure.
just thought about. I think that the interview segment is something that I think you can do you can do interview shows really well. But I also think a lot of people just kind of do the Me Too. Maybe I don't have expertise in this area, but I'm just going to bring people on and interview them. And I think there can only be so many of those types of shows. I think the podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis, most of them have. They definitely bring on guests from time to time, but either one, they have a ton of experience in their niche, like you do with WordPress, and you can really dive in and ask pointed questions. Or two, it's for the most part, most episodes have two consistent people or a consistent host and co-host that you can really develop a very strong rapport with over time. So I think we'll see less of the just generic Q&As and more of the two-ladder, and that's why I moved to more of a consistent guest schedule, because I think that me and a couple of co-hosts versus varying it up every single week.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be my next question, what you were going to do to sort of diversify, if you had any plans to diversify for 2015. That's one of the ones that, of course, the guests in my audience know. I sent out an email and I said, are you sick of hearing about WordPress? Do you want to hear from more people like Andrew here today? It was a good mix. People were like, don't give up on WordPress, and yes, bring in other people, which I was happy to hear. But do you have any plans to sort of diversify or change it up a bit?
Actually, funny, I'm going to be niching down even more. So I mean, we're kind of e-commerce right now, and the forum is definitely focused on kind of established entrepreneurs, e-commerce entrepreneurs. But I think we're going to be taking the entire brand, the blog, and the podcast that direction. Just because I think, like you mentioned, it's so competitive that I think the more you can focus and the more you can speak to one very specific person, the more powerful you'll be for them, and you'll probably get a lot of fringe ancillary listeners as well. So, yeah, that's a good question. I think it is really important to focus, though. Not to say that every single episode you have has to be about technical WordPress fundamentals, because like podcasts are just as much about entertainment as they are about learning.
Exactly.
At least from my perspective, But I do think you can really diversify. So for me, I'm not going to say every episode we do is going to be strictly on shopping carts or something that you have to sit on your computer, but I do think from every episode, would I, as a store owner, enjoy listening to this? Maybe it's talking about travel reward points. Maybe it's talking about, man, how do you invest money you're making from your store? It doesn't have to be directly related to that niche, but it needs to be something that people in the industry would really enjoy.
Yeah. No, spot on. Last part of this conversation, you run a membership section, as do I. Folks know the Matt Report Pro. And curious to hear your thoughts on running a membership setup, or excuse me, what your membership setup is and how that's been going for you over the last year.
Yeah, so just so I can hopefully kind of give the most value, are you more interested in hearing about like delivering kind of information products, or actually like a true recurring monthly membership site?
Let's talk about how you. Let's talk about your setup technically, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How your e-commerce section and how you kind of get that into your forums. We talked about it a little bit before the show, and then I'm interested to hear, about how you're delivering your digital product has helped that, or maybe not. But yeah, let's start with the technical stuff first.
Sure. So we have a couple different things we deliver. We have an e-commerce training course that's available to anyone, one-time purchase. And technically, we deliver that using a combination of Ontraport, which manages the billing and the permissions, and a WordPress plugin. So it's hosted on WordPress. The other kind of membership site, and this is more of a true membership site with a recurring, monthly or quarterly payment, is a private forum that we run for established e-commerce professionals or store owners, and we run that on Vanilla Forms, vanillaforms.com. It's a hosted solution that we use, and for getting people on that, we were talking about this, Matt, a little bit before. It's really people come, they apply by just a WooForms page. They sign up on a PayPal link. We review their application. If everything looks good, we manually add them to the form. It's really unglamorous. From any developer is probably choking on themselves right now listening to this. But that's kind of how our tech infrastructure is set up.
Yeah, so. Most folks in the audience are like, Paid Memberships Pro and BB Press, and it's, you make the purchase and they automatically give them rights to the forum. It's so easy, but I totally get it.
And we thought about that, but for me, when we were kicking this off, for me, like having a form, the form was the form functionality that allowed, one, just a great user experience, and two, allowed us to be able to pull people into the discussion. That's a feature that some forms have, some forms don't. By just tagging them, was what we built everything around, because that was what I thought was going to determine largely more so than the automated aspects of bringing people on board the success. So that's why we went that route.
So your digital product, does that funnel into an eventual pro member or VIP member, or is it just a one-off?
Just a one-off thing. We definitely have people who do sometimes, will go through the training, build up a store, and then apply for the advanced community, which, hopefully we see that. Otherwise, the product isn't working very well. But mostly they are slightly different, definitely different paths and funnels.
And do you develop that and support that all by yourself, or do you have a virtual team that sort of helps you with that product, or both?
Yeah, so for both teams, definitely have a fantastic team. We've got a community manager for the forums who's come on. She's been on about 6 months, and she's part-time now. She'll be coming on full-time January 1st, which I'm excited for. So she definitely helps out with the form management side of things. And then on the digital side, it's pretty straightforward. So just I've got someone who really takes care of any troubleshooting issues, refunds, access issues. She takes care of all that.
That's great. And the book is Profitable E-commerce, right? You go to your ecommercefuel.com website. There's a call to action on the right-hand side that says how to build a successful store. Click here to learn more. You click that, and you can get access to the book.
Yeah, you got it. Yep, it's a free lead generation tool. I'm sure, again, WordPress listeners will be real familiar with that. And it really goes to the nuts and bolts of if you want to dropship a product or get into e-commerce in general, specifically based on how to pick a niche and how to find suppliers more than anything else. That's
awesome. Andrew, this has been a great episode. I can't thank you enough for one, finally getting to meet you, and two, having you join the show. It's been an amazing ride. ecommercefuel.com. Check everything out that's going on there, especially if you're interested in e-commerce sales, especially if a lot of folks are WooCommerce developers in the audience. This is a great resource for you to tap in and learn these different things. Like, learn from this podcast, learn from what's going on over there, so you can apply these lessons to your WooCommerce development. Different things like this individual product SKU for variations. Right there. Somebody build an extension for WooCommerce that solves this problem right here, if it doesn't already exist. Andrew, where can folks find you to say thanks?
Yeah, absolutely. Over at ecommercefuel.com is the best way. Twitter's a really easy way to get a hold of me. If there's any way you can spell Youderian, which is going to be brutal, probably just link up to the show notes here, but at Youderian or at ecommercefuel on Twitter. And the podcast, of course, that's the best way to find me. And then for engaging with people, the private forum is where I spend way too much of my day. It kills my productivity. Probably should block it, but that's where I'm hanging out and engaging a lot. So
that's great. Everybody else, you know what to do. MattReport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. If you want to support the show, best way to do that is to join our pro membership. MattReport.com/join. Join a host of other WordPress entrepreneurs talking about the same things that we're talking about here live on the show. We just had our monthly mastermind call yesterday. It was awesome. Everybody's setting their goals for 2015. It's exciting to hear that. So yeah, if you're interested, mattreport.com/join. Until next time, everybody.